Have you ever woken up between 3 and 5 in the morning, with your heart racing, the room completely silent, and a strange feeling in the air? It wasn't just waking up, it was a calling. For centuries, mystics, monks, and prophets have pointed to this time slot, between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., as the hour of spiritual watch, also called by many the hour of the Spirit. But what Pope Leo XIV revealed in secret goes beyond tradition and borders on the forbidden realm of spiritual warfare. According to internal Vatican reports, Pope Leo XIV not only studied the night prayer patterns of the saints, but he also had access to ancient records from the Archive of the Hours, a forgotten collection with detailed descriptions of apparitions, possessions, and angelic visitations between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., with details that never reached the public. These documents, according to a source close to the Supreme Pontiff, were locked in a subterranean wing of the secret archives, marked with a seal, non temere, spiritus vigilant, do not fear, the Spirit's watch. Leo XIV knew that waking up at this time, especially suddenly, wasn't biology. It was a summons. You may have thought it was insomnia, heat, or a nightmare. But what if it was heaven trying to speak to you, or worse, a breach that attracted something from the realm of darkness? In biblical tradition, many of the most impactful encounters with the spiritual world happened at that time. Samuel was lying down in the temple where the Ark of God was. Then the Lord called, Samuel, 1 Samuel 3:4. It was early morning, and the boy heard a voice 3 times. Jesus himself, in Gethsemane, asked the disciples to watch with him during the night. And the text is clear. He returned and found them sleeping. He said to Peter, "Could you not watch with me 1 hour?" Matthew 26:40. The hour of darkness was near. The betrayal was on the way, and their spiritual eyes were shut. Between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., the veil between worlds becomes thinner. The soul is more sensitive, the body more fragile, and the spirit more exposed. Leo XIV warned his advisors, "Whoever awakens at this hour is being visited, by light or by shadow." Now think, what if that strange awakening, that feeling you weren't alone in the room, that sudden unease, was a sign that something or someone was trying to touch you? There are angels who call, but there are also demons that prowl. There are warnings from above, but there are also stealthy oppressions. The early morning is not neutral, it's invisible war, and you may be in the middle of it. You opened your eyes. The clock read 3:17. The world seemed suspended, as if time had stopped, and the silence, heavy as lead, crushed the atmosphere. Something was wrong. You felt it, but couldn't explain it. And that's exactly how it starts. In spiritual language, waking between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. is called by some ancient monks the hour of visitation, because it's at that time that visitors from the invisible world draw near. They don't knock, they're already there, and only the attentive notice. Pope Leo XIV confided to a select group of cardinals that in his early years of ministry he had recurring visions during those hours. He would wake up every night at exactly 3:33, a number many associate with the Trinity. But in the Vatican's nights, it began to be linked to signs of spiritual war. He wrote, "It is not the time on the clock that wakes the body, it is the tension of the spirit." One such morning, Leo heard 3 knocks coming from within his private chapel. Upon opening, no one was there, only a Bible open on the floor at Isaiah 21:6. "This is what the Lord says to me. Go, post a lookout and have him report what he sees." He understood the message. God had awakened him as a watchman. But a watchman of what? The spiritual world moves when the natural world sleeps. And in this movement, a window opens. Not a physical one, but a breach, where dreams can become prophecies and shadows can whisper lies disguised as comfort. That's why so many people report sleep paralysis, sensations of presences, or sudden panic attacks during this time. It's not just psychological. Often it's spiritual. There is a world that operates while everyone thinks they are alone with their thoughts. Leo XIV deeply investigated this. He gathered reports from exorcist priests, missionaries in war zones, and mystics in monastic silence. All pointed to the same pattern. The most intense manifestations of darkness occurred between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., but also the deepest awakenings of faith. Because where evil abounded, grace abounded much more. Romans 5:20. The question is, what do you do when you wake at that time? Do you pray? Do you remain silent? Do you ignore it? Because what happens there can mark your soul forever. The voice you hear, the impression you feel, the verse that comes to mind, none of it is by chance. That is the hour when heaven whispers and hell roars, and you are caught in between. Will you keep sleeping? There's a dark reason why many occultists avoid sleeping between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. Ancient records of the Ritual Romanum, used by exorcists for centuries, identify this time frame as the invasion watch, when malevolent entities more easily manifest in places without prayer, without spiritual protection, or inhabited by hearts that are also asleep in their faith. And this is the concept Pope Leo XIV sought to study deeply after an inexplicable event in his youth. According to a letter never officially published, but preserved by a Benedictine monk at the Abbey of Monte Cassino, Leo XIV, still an archbishop at the time, was called to a home where a young woman would wake every night at exactly 3:13, paralyzed, eyes fixed on the ceiling, whispering a repetitive phrase, "He is here, he is at the door." There was no medical explanation, nor psychiatric. But after 3 days of fasting and prayer, the future pope decided to watch with her. The next dawn, at 3:14, the bedroom lamp exploded by itself, the crucifix fell, and the young woman cried tears of blood. Leo XIV had no doubt. This was not psychological, it was demonic infiltration, and the detail that most unsettled him: the entity only acted during that specific hour. During the day, the girl was normal. But at night, her body became a battlefield. The Pope then began gathering testimonies from others around the world who woke up with identical nightmares, sensations of invisible hands pressing on their chest, voices whispering names, and sudden crises of anguish, always between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. These phenomena were cross-referenced with ancient Desert Father documents, especially those of Abba Agathon, who warned, "The enemy knows the sleep of the righteous. He prowls when the lamp of vigilance goes out." And maybe you're living exactly this, without realizing it. How many times have you woken up gasping for air, feeling something watching you? How many times have you dreamed of faces you don't recognize? How often were you seized by a strange unrest, even in silence? These awakenings are encrypted messages. Some are alerts from above, others are traps. That's why Leo XIV advised, whoever wakes between 3 and 5 must immediately invoke the presence of God, because they are either being called or being hunted. It's not superstition, it's discernment. This time frame is like a spiritual crossroads. You either get up and pray or turn over and fall back into stupor. What many don't understand is that the early morning hours shape the day. What happens then defines what will come. A prayer in that time can prevent a tragedy. A silent cry can seal deliverance, but ignoring that call could cost dearly. Imagine a silent battlefield where no one screams, but everyone fights. That's how the spiritual world moves between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. Invisible to the eyes, but brutally real. And it's in this scenario that Pope Leo XIV began to identify hidden patterns that most people would never perceive. During his investigation in the apostolic archives, he found a confidential document from 1666, written by a French bishop who reported a series of possessions in the city of Chartres. The strange part, all cases began with dreams between 3 and 5 in the morning, always preceded by sudden awakenings, cold sweat, and a sense of paralysis. The bishop wrote, "They wake as if returning from drowning, but it wasn't water, it was darkness. Leo XIV, upon reading this, was shaken, because he had already felt the same. On one of the darkest nights of his pontificate, he woke at 3:40 a.m., breath stuck in his throat and a bitter taste in his mouth. He knelt immediately to pray, but the floor felt as cold as snow, even though it was the peak of Roman summer. Opening the Bible blindly, it fell to Ephesians 6:12. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. The text wasn't a metaphor, it was a map. He understood that this time frame wasn't just sensitive, it was contested territory. In the Pope's words, between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. the heavens bend low, either to hear us or to judge us, and the demons stir, for they know most are asleep. And this is where your life comes into question. Maybe you've ignored these signs until now. Maybe you've rationalized everything as anxiety, insomnia, or stress. But what if it's not? What if it's a call to intercede for someone? What if it's a warning of a breach in your home? What if it's God trying to wake you because something greater is coming? Early morning is the interval between judgment and mercy, and what you do in that window may be the difference between blessing and collapse. You don't wake by accident. When your eyes open in the dark, something is already happening around you. The spiritual world doesn't wait for your permission. It has already begun, and you must choose which side you'll be on. Leo XIV said there are 3 types of people who wake at that hour: those who ignore and are weakened, those who fear and are tormented, those who rise and become watchmen. The question is, which one are you? You have no idea how much your midnight is being watched. While you sleep, decisions are being made in the invisible. Doors are opening or closing, bonds are being broken or reinforced. And all this happens while the natural world believes it's just another ordinary night, but it's not. Pope Leo XIV discovered a hidden pattern in prayers offered between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. He ordered data to be cross-referenced between miracle testimonies recorded at the Vatican and the times at which prayers were made, and the results were staggering. Over 70% of the reports mentioned divine answers following vigils during this period. He wrote by hand, "Darkness is not merely the absence of light. It is also the time the Most High reserves to listen to the few who still keep watch." This changes everything. Waking at that hour is not a nuisance. It's a sacred opportunity, a silent summons to become an intercessor, someone who stands between earth and heaven, between fear and faith, between chaos and deliverance. Have you noticed how the greatest revelations in the Bible happened at night? Abraham hears God in dreams. Jacob sees heaven open in a dream at dawn. Samuel is called while all is silent. Daniel receives deep visions while the empire sleeps. And Jesus, he prayed in the dark when the disciples were exhausted. Very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went off to a solitary place where he prayed. Mark 1:35. The early morning was Christ's altar, and it should be yours too. Leo XIV began encouraging the faithful to keep nighttime rosaries, quiet prayers in tongues, and prophetic declarations over their homes whenever they awoke during this interval. And the fruit was astounding. Reports of deliverances, family reconciliations, reverse diagnoses, broken depressions, interrupted spiritual attacks, all from a simple awakening. The world may say it's madness, that it's just a sleep disorder. But heaven knows, hell knows too, and now you know. Don't sleep through the call. Don't silence your night. Don't extinguish the light the Spirit is trying to ignite. Rise, even tired, even afraid, even in tears, because when the world stops, heaven begins to move. If this video is already making you reflect like it now, so YouTube understands the importance of this topic, comment below which city you're watching from, and send this video to someone who also wakes between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. It might be more than just a simple awakening. Have you ever wondered why it's exactly that time? Why does the clock strike 3:33, 4:07, and your heart jolts as if an invisible presence has crossed the threshold of reality? Pope Leo XIV didn't think this was random. To him, there was a spiritual strategy behind the clock, and the ancient monks knew it. He recovered a 12th century manuscript hidden in a forgotten abbey in Calabria. The text, written by a monk named Aurelio di Sasso, described in detail how the forces of darkness concentrated their actions between the 3rd and 5th hour before sunrise, and that this period was also when watchful angels would position themselves on rooftops to seek those who prayed. The monk's metaphor was clear: heaven patrols, but not everyone is found awake. Leo XIV said there are 3 main reasons God may allow or provoke a waking at that hour: prophetic calling. God is trying to show you something, a warning, a sign, a redirection that must be made before the day breaks. Spiritual attack. Oppressive forces are near, and the spirit senses it before the body reacts. Waking up at this hour is the soul's silent cry for help, intercession for someone. The Holy Spirit awakens you to pray for someone you don't even know is in danger. And that 3-minute prayer in the dark may save a life on the other side of the world. But what the Pope later revealed in a private document was even more disturbing. He believed this time frame was a spiritual interval between sentences and mercies, a time when angels write decisions, and repentance can still alter them. In other words, waking at this hour might mean your name is being mentioned in heaven or in hell, and how you respond changes everything. Some, when waking, grab their phones, watch videos, or try to go back to sleep. Others kneel, cry, and say, "Here I am, Lord." The difference between the two isn't in the alarm clock. It's in spiritual sensitivity. You don't need to be a pastor, priest, or mystic. You just need to understand that when God wakes you, He wants to protect you or prepare you. And often it's in the darkness of night that the most eternal decisions are made. The question is no longer why you wake. It's what will you do the next time you wake again. There are places where evil hides during the day, but moves freely in the early hours. Pope Leo XIV knew this, and for that reason, when he himself was awakened between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., especially during critical decision-making periods in the Vatican, he never went back to sleep. He would light a candle, kneel on the stone floor, and whisper prayers that only the silence could hear. But what most disturbed the Pope wasn't the awakening itself. It was what came before. Leo XIV discovered, after dozens of interviews with missionaries and exorcists, that there are subtle signs that precede these spiritual awakenings. Sudden chills before bed, dreams with repetitive symbols, stairs, doors, clocks, pressure on the chest, and, in some cases, nearly inaudible sounds, like whispers from voices you can't understand. These signs are not random. They are the prelude to a battle that's approaching. It's as if the spiritual world announces, "Prepare yourself. We are going to test you. We are going to call you." And only the spiritually sensitive notice. The rest are swept away like leaves in the wind. Leo XIV, while reading old records from the convent of Santa Croce in Jerusalem, found the case of a nun who woke up every night at 3:03 a.m. with a phrase on her lips: "He comes through the window." She didn't know what it meant, until one night, waking at the same hour, she saw a shadow standing beside her bed. When she began to pray, the shadow vanished, and a sweet perfume filled the room. She understood. God allowed the shadow to test her vigilance, just like Job, who was touched, not because God abandoned him, but because God trusted that he could endure. Job 1:12. Have you ever thought that maybe your silent midnight battle isn't punishment, but mission? Maybe you're being trained for something greater. Maybe heaven is testing whether you can withstand the dark hour before handing you the light. Jesus was betrayed at night. Peter denied him at the crow of the rooster, but it was at dawn on the third day that the stone was rolled away from the tomb. Midnight is a stage for falling and for resurrection, for fear and for power. What it becomes in your life depends on your response. When the next night comes, will you just sleep or will you watch? What would happen if you stopped ignoring these early hours? What if you treated this awakening between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. not as coincidence, but as a direct summons from heaven? What would change in your house, your mind, your destiny, if you got up, even tired, even confused, and said, "Speak, Lord, I am here"? Pope Leo XIV reflected deeply on this in his private notes. According to reports from his personal confessor, the pontiff believed God was raising silent watchmen in the four corners of the earth, ordinary people, without titles, without altars, but with a sensitivity that made them rise in the dark and intercede for causes they didn't even know. One early morning, Leo wrote a phrase that was never officially published. "Those who pray when everyone sleeps hold the world with invisible hands." Those words carry immense spiritual weight. Just imagine, while millions sleep, a small group of people awakens in the same interval, alone, in silence, with tears in their eyes, some whispering the name of a lost child, others repeating verses like clinging to the edge of a cliff, and others just quiet, but standing. And the most surprising part, they don't know they are part of the same army. They think they are alone, when in fact they are united by a war that transcends space and time. A war between invisible kingdoms, where the most powerful weapon is not shouting but persisting. The enemy hates this hour because it is in this time that the heavens move most strongly, when there is sincerity. That's why spiritual warfare often begins before you even open your eyes. The oppression, the nightmares, the unease, they're all strategies to keep you silent. But when you rise, hell trembles. Leo XIV understood this. That's why he left a directive for the whole world, never read from pulpits, but written in his personal journal. If you wake between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., rise, stay silent, kneel, and tell heaven, "I'm ready," even if you're not. Because availability is more powerful than understanding. God does not choose the qualified. He awakens those who respond. Will you respond? There are moments when time seems to freeze, and the soul, even without words, understands something greater is at stake. That is the kind of atmosphere surrounding those who wake between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. It's not just a nightly interval, it's a spiritual territory where every minute may contain a sentence or a deliverance. Pope Leo XIV used to say that upon waking at that hour, the soul enters a state of spiritual hearing, a rare phase in which the body remains vulnerable but the spirit is fully accessible. That's why he authorized the creation of an internal Vatican document titled Vigil Hour 0333, exclusive to priests and monks who desired to train for nighttime intercession. The manual was clear. No deep spiritual battle is won in daylight unless it has first been fought in darkness. The most eternal decisions, the most powerful revelations, the most urgent answers, all are hidden between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. But there's a dark detail. Leo XIV reported that the more spiritually sensitive someone becomes, the more intense the nighttime resistances become. That means, when you start getting up to pray at this hour, the attacks might increase too. Why? Because you've stopped being just a target, and you've become a threat. How many times have you felt something way down the room in the middle of the night? The air felt heavy, the silence oppressive, the shadow in the corner more real than it should be. These experiences are signs that the spiritual world has noticed your awakening, and now it will react. But here is the truth that Pope Leo wrote in his last note on the subject, just days before mysteriously disappearing from the Vatican for 48 hours. The early morning is the altar of the chosen. And even if 1,000 shadows rise against you, one single flame of prayer is enough to burn them all. You don't need to understand everything. You just need to rise. And every time you do, remember, you are part of something far greater, an invisible war, a prophetic summons, a call that separates the lukewarm from the awakened. Maybe that's why you're watching this video right now. Maybe heaven is saying, in the next early morning, I will call you again. Will you rise? Now you know. Waking between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. is not a disorder. It's not bad luck. It's not a coincidence. It is a sign from heaven. You have been touched. And the way you respond can change the course of your life. Pope Leo XIV declared with conviction, "What you do in the early morning echoes in the invisible world," and he knew it because he lived it. There are unauthorized records describing a series of nights when the Pope would simply vanish from his chambers between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., leaving the guards baffled with no trace. He always returned before sunrise, but with red eyes, and an aura the cardinals described as untouchable. What did he do in that time? He prayed, he interceded, he waged war for orphans, for nations, for the church, for those who didn't even know they needed prayer. Leo XIV was a common man who understood something extraordinary. The greatest spiritual weapon is not strength, it is vigilance. And that weapon is now in your hands. You can continue living as if nothing is happening, or you can get up in the night and change destinies. You can keep saying it's coincidence, or you can realize that every early morning is a divine invitation, a touch from the eternal on your soul. Heaven is ready to meet you in the dark hour. But will you be awake? Remember, those who rise when all others sleep gain access to secrets few will ever know. The next time your eyes open between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., don't be afraid. Take a deep breath, rise slowly, and say softly, "Speak, Lord, I heard your call." If this message spoke to you, like this video now so the message can reach more people. Comment below which city you're watching from, and share this content with someone you know has been waking up at this hour. They may be being summoned too, and don't know it. The vigil has begun. May God awaken you.